As South Africa continues to navigate energy uncertainty, Eskom's bid to reserve grid capacity for renewable energy projects procured by the state has failed. Nersa has ruled that the state-owned entity's application for reservation was vague and unclear. To discuss this, I'm now joined by Hügo Krüger, an energy expert and engineer with Truth and Energy. Appreciate your time. Just give us some insights into this analysis that I've just given on Eskom's bid, which was turned down by Nersa.
So there's a lot of history here which I think isn't being properly communicated to the public. I believe the minister at the time, speaking on a sound correction, was Minister Jeff Radebe, who brought in independent power providers to South Africa. And at that time already, Eskom was protesting, saying, one, this is backdoor privatization. And then the second point is we are forced to take electricity and then resell it on behalf of someone else. So they were the de facto subcontractors. At that time, Nersa, if I believe my facts are not correct, said that, wait a minute, this isn't what Eskom alleges it. They need to accept the independent power providers. So since that time, government has been running bids, and we're now at the latest bid windows, and there's been controversies around certain bids as well. Some have been good, some haven't been good. For example, the first few ones came in where Eskom was selling electricity at a loss effectively, and then later on they got learning curves, so they made profit back, things of that nature. So there was a lot of debate about it. And we're sitting now in a position where every year or so they do another bid window, and it's an auction system. And Eskom's argument has been, well, if we're forced to do this, we have to allocate a new grid space to those things, which sounds rational, right? But now with the unbundling process, there's another layer that's been added, which is private companies can just say, look, I've got ready, why should I go through a bid? Why can't I connect and sell directly to customers? And this is essentially what this was about. So in actual fact, what this ruling has done is it has not just given Eskom new competition, it's actually given government competition. Because the Department of Minerals and Energy is no longer going to do the bids. Or if they're going to continue, that bid is in competition. Somebody says, look, I've got electricity and I've got a client, why should I do any of this?
So I suppose it is a good question. Why should the IPPs go through Eskom or go through the bid process? Is it not good for the customers generally?
I think it's one of the best things that's happened, and it's actually, in my view, exposed the IPPs, especially the way some of them were brought in. Because, for example, Minister Mantashe, during the State of the Nation at the beginning of this year, made a statement which was incredible, that something like only 100 out of the 4,000 megawatts have been connected from the IPPs. So a lot of people have been asking questions over those contracts. So it's a very good thing that they've got competition and saying, okay, now we're bringing in more competition to the market. There is one cautionary tale here, though, which is Eskom has always been, since for the last 30 years actually, not only the tariff that is cost recovery, cost reflective. We know they're selling electricity at a loss to some municipalities. We know government's giving them bailouts, all of these things. And when the unbundling process started, I was one of the few people who initially opposed it, saying, okay, if we're going to do it, we need to accept the conditions of a market. And one of that conditions is you have to accept bankruptcy as normal. So you have to now accept competition, and you have to accept that if a customer doesn't choose Eskom, that they don't have revenue, and we cannot have government giving them a purse anymore. Now, my question is, and this is a question to the audience, an open question, will the government accept it? Did the government know what they were going to do? Because they were always saying unbundling isn't privatization. Remember, they were all spinning it one by one. And when a few people say, guys, well, if you're going to unbundle, you're bringing competition, and your competition is better than you. Inevitably, you're putting Eskom on the road to privatization, which I think this is a symptom of it.
So you think they are going to go the way of privatization, even if they don't call it privatization? Because obviously they're going to have to be competitive in order to remain in business.
How can you have a market without having competition? And the consequence of competition is bankruptcy. Okay, so and if Eskom goes to, unless Eskom performs well, and we've seen they have performed well, but why should industrial customers, heavy customers, say we need to pay Eskom's electricity? I spoke to people working in the solar in South Africa a few days ago. They say, look, even with Eskom's recovery now, solar installations still pay themselves off in 3 to 5 years for many of these companies. So they're losing money by staying with Eskom.
So let's talk about
this is a problem.
Hügo, you mentioned the issue around tariffs. Where tariffs likely to go? They're going to go up. They're going to go down if once these IPPs start to come in.
Well, the word tariff should not exist to begin with if you have a private market. You have supply and demand. So that if there is a need for electricity, companies can update tariffs, and that will hit a point where new investors would see fat in the system and they would start investing into new generation, and theoretically they would compete against Eskom. And ultimately, the price of electricity, which is what we should be calling it from now on, will be set by the market conditions. That's what it should do. So the idea, and this is another inefficiency struck into the system, Nersa still has the scope to set tariffs, but I'm asking myself, if we have a competitive market, why would tariffs make sense, especially for generation, generating at a supply and demand thing? So that whole tariff has to be thrown out of the window at the moment, but Nersa has not been de-scoped from that responsibility yet. So we're going to a very strange unbundling, and I suspect what's going to happen is eventually the government will yield on this. And so we've already unbundled, we've already privatized, and now we need to have competition, and then market is supply and demand. And then the price is set by the market equilibrium price. It will not be set by a regulator anymore. The price to the consumer might still be regulated. That's different because they still have to sell through the distribution system and etc. But at the end of the day, the amount of money to get electricity to your home should, in my view, only be recovered by the consumer. There should not be missing money in the system that the government bails out. And we need to actually have a big discussion over tariffs and cost and things of that nature, because the missing elephant in the room is who pays for transmission and distribution at the moment, where the big upgrades are necessary.
All right, much to ponder. Hügo Krüger, energy expert and engineer from Truth and Energy. Appreciate your time this afternoon. This is Newsfeed PM, a touch shy of 1:30. Reminder of our leading stories when we come back.